Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer. Today on our 2022 Chevy Equinox, we're going to be showing you how to install the eTrailer Class 3 trailer hitch receiver. But before we do that, why don't we check it out and make sure that this is going to be the right hitch for you. When it comes to the Equinox, you know, they're pretty popular SUVs, and a lot of people use them to do a little bit of everything. Whether, you know, you plan on putting a bike rack back here, maybe a cargo carrier, or even if you plan on pulling a trailer around. You know, if it were me, I would want a hitch that would be able to handle just about anything you want to throw at it. And that's exactly what this one is going to do. Really, you know, open up your opportunities on what you can do with your Equinox. And what else came to my mind is I'd want something that would look pretty decent as well. You know, not a huge hitch hanging down all the way on the bottom, being a big eyesore. And honestly, I think out of the hitches available for the Equinox, this one's probably my favorite. For the most part, it's going to be completely hidden, and really the only thing you're going to be able to see is the receiver tube opening. One of the other reasons I think this hitch probably looks the best is I like the finish. It's got that matte black, and to me it kind of just matches the bottom of our bumper a little bit better, and kind of looks more of like a factory type option. But you know, that's just my personal opinion. And if you like a shinier finish or whatever, you know, there's a couple other options out there. But with that said, this being a Class 3 hitch, it is going to have that 2" by 2" receiver tube opening. And that's an extremely common size, so a ton of different things are going to work with it. At the end, you'll have a reinforced collar for some extra support. And the hitch is going to use that standard 5/8 pin and clip. Keep in mind though, pin and clip doesn't come included with the hitch. If you need one, not a huge deal. You can always grab it here at eTrailer. The safety chain openings are going to be a loop style, and they're going to be big enough to allow us to use just about any size hook that our trailer might have. As far as the hitch's weight capacities go, it's actually going to have some pretty high numbers. Maximum gross tongue weight rating is going to be 675 pounds. That's going to be the amount of weight pushing down on the hitch, so that's more than adequate for just about any size bike rack or cargo carrier that you'd want to use, for example. As far as the hitch's maximum gross trailer weight rating goes, that's going to be 4,500 pounds, and that's going to be the amount of weight pulling on the hitch. So that'll be the weight of your trailer plus anything that you might have on it. This can be used with the weight distribution system, which is a separate component, but what happens whenever you use that is it's going to help keep your trailer and your vehicle level whenever you're going down the road. So if you plan on pulling a heavier camper or something along those lines, might be worth looking into. But even if you use that, the weight capacities are going to remain the same. I do always like to suggest, though, it's never a bad idea just to grab your Chevy's owner's manual. That way you can make sure your Equinox can pull that much weight safely. And with all that in mind, if you are going to be pulling a trailer around, you're going to want the lights to work on it. You know, that way everyone around you knows what's going on. And to accomplish that, you can always grab some trailer wire. So why don't we go ahead and just grab a couple of measurements, and these are going to help us figure out what hitch-mounted accessories will work best. If you go from the ground to the top inside edge of the receiver tube opening, that's going to be about 11.5 inches. So if you plan on pulling a trailer around, chances are pretty good you're going to need to get a ball mount that has a rise in the shank. If you go from the center of the hitch pin hole to the edge of the rear bumper, that's going to be about 6 inches. And you can use that measurement to help figure out that if any folding accessories you might have can be stored in that upright position without hitting the back of your Equinox. Just to do a quick comparison of some of the other hitches available for the Equinox, in terms of appearance, they're all going to look pretty much the same in terms of what you're able to see and everything else. Really, the main difference is kind of what we talked about earlier with the finish. So you have a couple to choose from, and kind of whatever you like the best is really what it's going to come down to. But other than that, at the end of the day, good looking hitch, and it's going to allow you to get out there and do the things you're trying to do. As far as the installation goes, really not too bad. You do have to lower the exhaust down some. to make room for the hitch, but not really a big deal. Everything's pretty easy to get to, and as long as you stay focused, really shouldn't give you too many issues. But speaking of the install, why don't we go ahead, pull into the garage, and put it on together now. To begin our installation, we're going to be here at the back of our Equinox, and along the bottom edge of our bumper, we're going to have 2 Torx bit screws that we need to pull out. And these are going to be a T15. Get that one removed, and then the one over on this side in the same spot. At this point, we are going to need to let our exhaust come down a little bit, but what I suggest doing is taking a strap and just running it from side to side. That way we can kind of control how fast and how far we let the exhaust come down. So first one will be this rubber isolator hanger right here, kind of just in front of our muffler. You can spray it down with some soapy water or penetrating oil. Then just take a pry bar or even a big screwdriver and just push one end of it off, just like that. And then kind of behind our bumper here, we're gonna have some exhaust hangers that are bolted up. So that's what these fasteners are here. Now you have to pull the bolts out from this side, so you can't really see the head of them, but I mean, pretty straightforward. And I want to mention, from this point on, anything we do to one side of the vehicle, we're also going to do to the other side, because it'll be set up the same way. But with that said, I'm going to use a 15 millimeter. I got this ratcheting wrench, but I mean, you can get a regular socket wrench up there too. So what I like to do is just kind of break them both loose. And then pull, you know, one or the other completely out here. And then once these are both out, we're gonna kind of have to push this plastic hanger deal towards the back of the car, which we'll get to in just a second. So what you're going to do is just take this whole piece, just kind of work it off, just like that. So with both the sides loose, we can loosen up our strap. And what you're going to need to do is kind of take these deals, push them down, and what we're trying to do is get this to come below the bumper. So it's a little tight, but it'll make things a lot easier in the long run here. Just like that. Now if you look on the bottom of our frame rail, this is where our hitch is going to attach, and we're going to need to get hardware inside of the frame. So this larger hole, that's going to be used as an access hole. The only issue is our hardware, like the spacer block, for example, and our carriage bolt. They're too big to fit in there, so we need to enlarge this a little bit. You can use a bunch of different things. Thankfully, we don't really have to take out a ton of material. You can use a hand file or a bit like this. Obviously, something like this will speed it up a little bit, so I'm just going to open this up some. So I will take the bit here and enlarge this a little bit until it's big enough to allow that hardware to pass through. So that looks about good. We'll just double check here. Spacer block fits in. Head of the bolt will fit in. And what I do suggest, since we do have some bare exposed metal now, not a bad idea just to take some paint. Just put a slight coating on there just to help prevent rust and corrosion. So after giving this a minute to dry, we can get our hardware in. So we're going to be doing this attachment point first. You're going to take the coiled end of your fish wire, and I find it somewhat useful to just kind of measure the distance and put a bend in it there, because you're going to feed that up and then pull it out of that hole that we enlarged. Take your spacer block, slide that over the pull wire, thread the carriage bolt on, and just put push everything into place until it drops down. The other two attachment points that we're going to be using will be this hole as well as this one. We're going to use that same technique and hardware combination. With these two, I do suggest starting with this back one first though. So I'll slide that in, and this one we got kind of lucky, it came right out. Sometimes you might have to kind of reach up there and help guide it out a little bit. And so we'll get this on the fish wire. Drop down, and same exact deal with this one here. So now with the next set of hands, we can take our hitch and get it into position. We're gonna kind of go over the exhaust first. Then we're gonna take our fish wires, run them through the corresponding holes in the hitch. The one in the middle, you're gonna put through that oval shaped hole. Once we have them all through, we can lift up. And once all the hardware drops through, we can then remove one of the pull wires, take a flange nut, and get it started hand tight. Once you have at least one started on each side hand tight, we can continue to remove our pull wires and get the rest of the flange nut started. So sometimes with these, when you try to push up to thread the nut on, that bolt wants to go up, you can just apply a little side pressure to it. That'll help keep it steady and make it much easier. With all the hardware in place and hand tight, we can snug everything down. You can use a 19mm or a 3/4 inch socket, it'll work as well. At this point, we need to come back with a torque wrench and tighten all the hardware down to the amount specified in the instructions. If you don't have a torque wrench, you can always grab one here at eTrailer, or a lot of times go to your local auto parts store, and they usually have one there available that you can rent. So with the hitch torqued, now we can get our exhaust back up. What I'm gonna do is, pull this down on one side at a time, get this back up there, and I think what I'm gonna do is get this one started. So helps if you re-lubricate it. We got that one on, and then we can go back to our bumper and get those bolted back in. So just like we talked about, came back here, got these brackets back up in place, get the bolts started, and we'll tighten them back down. With the exhaust supporting itself again, we can get rid of our strap. And last but not least, don't forget to come back and reinstall your screws here. And that'll finish up our look at and our installation of the etrailer.com Class 3 trailer hitch receiver on our 2022 Chevrolet Equinox.